For centuries, just one city basically ruled the known world. It was an empire on a scale that's just hard to wrap your head around. And its influence is still all around us, in our languages, our laws, our buildings. I'm talking, of course, about Rome. So let's dive in and try to figure out how this one city managed to run an empire that stretched across 3 different continents. I mean, just look at this map for a second. You can trace Rome's reach from the misty frontiers of Britain all the way down to the scorching sands of the Sahara. And from the Atlantic coast of Spain clear across to Syria. Rome's power was just absolute. This wasn't just an empire, it was its own world. It completely dominated the Mediterranean Sea, which they even had a name for, Mare Nostrum, which literally means our sea. And get this, at its absolute peak, right around the middle of the 2nd century, this massive territory was home to an estimated 60 million people. Think about that. That's a staggering number of different cultures, languages, and peoples, all living under one single authority. So that really brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did they pull it off? How did one city project its power, keep control, and manage 60 million people spread across such a huge area? Well, to even start to answer that, we've got to look at the political machine at the heart of the empire, a really unique system that was born from the ashes of the old Roman Republic. So the system they came up with was called the Principate. It was established by the very first emperor, Augustus, and honestly, it was a pretty brilliant political solution. See, on the surface, it looked like he was preserving the old republic, keeping the Senate around and all that. But let's be real, all the actual power, especially control over the army, was now in the hands of one man, the emperor. This slide really lays out the delicate dance between the emperor and the Senate. On one side, you've got the emperor, the sole ruler, whose authority ultimately came from the legions of soldiers. And on the other side, you've got the Senate. It was made up of the wealthiest, most powerful families, and while it had lost most of its real power, it still had immense prestige. An emperor's reputation often came down to how he treated the Senate, and if an emperor was hostile to them, well, guess who was writing the history books? The senators. They would make sure he went down in history as a total tyrant. So really, when you boil it all down, Roman political life was this constant push and pull between these 3 major players you see here. The emperor, sitting at the top, the aristocracy in the Senate, and the army, the ultimate source of real power. And look, we absolutely cannot overstate the importance of the army. This wasn't some weekend militia, This was a full-time, professional, paid military force. By the 4th century, it had something like 600,000 soldiers. That made it the largest single organization in the entire empire. And these guys, they could literally make or break emperors. And believe me, they knew it. Their loyalty was absolutely everything. All right, so that's the politics. But what about the economic engine that powered this whole thing? An empire this huge needed a seriously powerful economy to keep it going. So what fueled this massive enterprise? And what was daily life actually like for the millions of people living inside it? This image right here of a shipwreck, it's just a perfect snapshot of how massive Roman commerce was. Its cargo is full of thousands of these clay jars called amphorae, which they used to transport everything. Stuff like wine, wheat, and olive oil were shipped across the Mediterranean in unbelievable quantities, connecting pretty much every corner of the empire in this huge web of trade. And all of this trade, it was supported by an infrastructure that was, frankly, shockingly sophisticated for its time. I mean, look at this list. Rome had major harbors, mines, huge-scale factories for things like olive oil. They even used water power all over the place and developed these complex banking systems that Europe wouldn't really see again for centuries. But who was doing all this work? This mosaic gives us a little glimpse, showing supervisors watching over laborers. You see, the Roman economy relied heavily on controlling its workforce, everything from slaves to tenant farmers. They would organize workers into gangs and use these methods of supervision that, in some ways, almost foreshadow modern factory production. It's wild. Okay, I love this. Wall, I admire you for not collapsing in ruins when you have to support so much boring writing on you. This little piece of graffiti from Pompeii tells us something absolutely fascinating. Being able to read and write wasn't just for the rich elites. This kind of casual, funny writing pops up everywhere, on everything from soldiers' letters to advertisements. It just paints this amazing picture of a society that was way more connected and literate than you might think. Okay, so after about 2 centuries of what we call the
Pax Romana, relative peace and prosperity, things took a really dramatic turn. The 3rd century came along and just pushed the empire to its absolute breaking point, threatening to shatter the whole Roman world.
It was really a perfect storm. As you can see on the timeline, over in the east, this new super aggressive dynasty, the Sasanians, popped up in Iran. At the exact same time, Germanic tribes started invading over and over again across the northern borders. And while all that was happening, the empire was tearing itself apart from the inside with constant civil war. And just get a load of this, 25 different emperors rose and fell in less than 50 years. I mean, can you imagine that chaos? And wow, this image, it just captures the whole crisis perfectly. For the very first time in Roman history, a Roman emperor, Valerian, was captured in battle by a foreign enemy, the Sasanian king Shapur I. The psychological shock of this, it just ripped across the empire. It was unthinkable. It really seemed like the Roman world was on the verge of total collapse. But here's the thing. Rome didn't just shatter into a million pieces. It transformed. So let's take a look at how the empire clawed its way back from the brink and entered its final phase, a period historians now call Late Antiquity. So this whole era, it wasn't just about decline and fall. The 4th to 7th centuries were a time of incredible change. You had major shifts in culture, a totally reorganized economy, and, maybe most importantly, a massive religious revolution was kicking off. And right at the heart of that revolution is this guy, Emperor Constantine. His conversion to Christianity has to be one of the most pivotal moments in all of Western history. You had this once persecuted faith that would, incredibly, become the dominant religion of the entire empire, completely reshaping its identity forever. And even as the empire changed and eventually, broke apart in the West, its legacy was just immense. It endured. Structures like the Colosseum are still standing today as these incredible testaments to Rome's power, its ambition, and its engineering. They're these incredible physical reminders of a world that literally laid the foundations for the one we live in today. Which, of course, leaves us with one last really big question. Did Rome really fall in a blaze of glory? Or was it more of a long, messy, complicated transformation that just sort of became the world we know now? It's a debate that's still going on, and it's a fascinating one to think about.